5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi, Wayne Collins. It's Glendora. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Glendora?
Very good. I love the way you sing our theme song.
Oh, thank you.
You wrote the words to it, didn't you?
Oh, yes, the words and the music.
And you performed it, right?
Oh, yes.
Wow. Well, that's something you and the whole universe did together. You know that, don't you?
Yes, of course. Yes.
You don't do anything alone. It's all of us together, isn't it?
Yes.
Wayne, what was Pittsfield, Massachusetts, Berkshire's like in 1955?
Well, it was very different in 1955 from the way that things are now. And on a previous program, I touched on the dime stores that were on North Street, which I always loved, and the music stores. There was Sammy Vincent's, and then further up the street, Wood Brothers. And it was different then because you could go in at Wood Brothers. They had listing booths. You could go in and try a record, and if you liked it, to buy it. And in later years, the records were prepackaged at the factory, so you couldn't do that anymore.
No, right.
And at Sammy Vincent's, he had a speaker out onto the street, and he put a record on that was extremely popular that week, hoping that people would hear it and say, oh, yes, I have to go in and buy that record. And we had clothing stores up on North Street. There was Rosenfels and Bessie Clark. And
what was the first one?
The time is 8 o'clock a.m.
Wayne, what was the first one?
Rosenfels.
Oh, okay.
That was men's clothes, and as I remember. And then there was Bessie Clark. That one was there longer than some of the others, as I remember. There was Holden Stones. That was more for women's clothing, as I remember. And those are all gone now. We have one nice clothing store up there now, Stephen Valenti's. And, we had theaters up on North Street. We had the Capitol, which was a grand theater with a big lobby, and, the smell of the popcorn in the lobby when you'd go in, and it didn't cost $7 to buy a bucket. It was like 10 or 15 cents for a box of popcorn. We had another theater on North Street. It was the Palace. And then we had the Strand. And further up on North Street, there was one called the State. And then there was one on the side street, Union Street. It was called the Union Square. And none of those are operating as movie theaters any longer. And we had several eating places on North Street that they weren't five-star restaurants, but they were good restaurants where you could go in and get an adequate meal for a reasonable price. We had the Rosa, and there would be Italian spaghetti there, and there was another one, the Hub, and there was a Chinese restaurant called the China Clipper. And the dime stores had lunch counters. Woolworth had one over to the left as you'd go in, and Newberry's had one to the right as you'd go in. And in the dime stores, it was different from the way it was in later years because there'd be a woman at a sales lady at each department. She'd be in the middle of a circular counter, and you'd pay for whatever you bought at that counter. So you'd have several little paper bags of items that you purchased in the dime store. And then West Street was interesting, too. There was a Chinese laundry there. The Salvation Army building used to be on West Street. And several eating places. There was the Robin Hood, and there was the Busy Bee was a very popular Italian restaurant, very noted for its spaghetti. And there was the Berkshire Restaurant. So many, and these things are all gone. On the corner of West Street was the Wendell Hotel, it's a hotel now, but it isn't the same one. They tore the Wendell down and put something else up, and you had these little shops. There was the Wendell Barber Shop that was part of that block, and a little coffee shop called the Cup and Saucer. There was a pharmacy in there. I've gone into detail about the old library building on Park Square, the Berkshire Athenaeum, an old Gothic building with beautiful woodwork and stained glass windows. in the 60s. And an ivy-covered 3-story building with a dome on top like the U.S. Capitol. And that's very dramatic. They still light the dome at night, and you can drive by and see the dome all lit. And
The what?
the dome lit up
What dome, dear?
on top of Pittsfield High School.
Oh,
Capitol building, a dome like the Capitol building. And the City Hall used to be located on Park Square. Now the City Hall is what used to be the post office over on Fenn and Federal and School Street. And the post office is where there used to be a feed store. Everything has changed in Pittsfield. And Thursday night, North Street would be bustling with activity. That was the day that General Electric people received their paychecks. And people would go up on North Street on Thursday night, and the stores would be open, and it would be loaded with foot traffic. And it was a big thing. But in the fall of 1955 was when the Allendale Shopping Center opened. And it wasn't a big elaborate shopping center like now. There might have been 7 or 8 stores at the most. At the end was an anchor store on the right hand end. That was Sears and Roebuck, and on the left was a grocery store. It was the Empire Market. It might have been called something else before that. There was a dime store there called Neisner's, and there was a music store called Dalton Appliance Center, and an auto parts store called Jack and Harry's. And there may have been a little bank building branch, and I believe there was a bakery. But that was about it. It was a small shopping center, but that was the start of shopping complexes where it would have a big parking lot. You could go in and didn't have to worry about parking meters or overtime parking. You could stay as long as you wanted. And that's the way Pittsfield was. And also in Pittsfield, we had about 15 elementary schools then. We had Allendale, Bartlett, Briggs, Pontusic. There was Tucker School, and there was Rice School, Williams School, Egremont, Dawes. Then there was Pomeroy, and then there was a little one. It was, the name escapes me at the moment. It should come to me. Was located out more.
What's the Christian Center going then?
Oh, yes. The Christian Center was very active then. And I believe that was originally supported by the Methodist Church, the First Methodist Church.
That was down on Robbins Street?
Robbins Avenue, yes. I know what the little school was. It was Abbey Lodge. That was the name of it. And then there was Hibbard School. Now, most of these schools have closed. We're down to about maybe 6 elementary schools now. And they've added on, made community schools. See, in my day, they were little neighborhood schools, and the students could go home for lunch.
Yep.
There were a few who were bused in. I went to Allendale School, and there a few from Cheshire Road area or the Dalton Town line were bused in, but most of us were able to walk to school. And the school only had, there were 9 classrooms on one side and 5 on the other, only 14 classrooms, but they've added on, and it's much larger now. And an awful lot of the students are bused in.
What was General Electric doing at the time?
Oh, it was booming. I remember kids coming to school, in elementary school, and they'd have buttons on that would say Operation Upturn, and that referred because their fathers worked at General Electric, and that was evidently a campaign they had at the time for the business, a slogan, Operation Upturn.
Oh, okay.
And they were making all kinds of things, defense things and electrical appliances and you name it over at General Electric. And we had a population which kept growing and growing. By the 1960s, we had 60,000 people in Pittsfield. And it's quite a few less now. I'm not sure what it is, probably near to 40,000. There was a much lower rate of crime back in the 1950s, you could go any place, and even at night, and you really didn't have to worry. And we're living in a whole different world now.
Oh, so what did they do to the library, the Athenaeum?
Oh, that's part of the court system now. So they've cut it up and made it into different offices and rooms, and you have to go through a check, a security check to go in.
Well, why did they do that to the Athenaeum?
Well, there were some who were convinced that they needed a new library, that they needed more space. So now they have a different building that was built 1974, and it has a lot more space, but I've never fully accepted it because it doesn't have the ambience of the old library.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yes, and we had all kinds of churches that were vital organizations back in the 1950s.
You had
A lot of those sadly have closed.
You had that huge Methodist church downtown.
Yes, it's still there, but all of these congregations are sadly diminished. Several of the Catholic...
Anyway, you used to have this huge Methodist church downtown.
Oh, yes. It was huge. And in Pittsfield High School, we had a huge auditorium that was used like a civic center, and it must have seated 1,000 people. Because when we'd have our rallies in high school, the football rallies, just before a football game, there would always be a rally, and they'd have it in 2 sessions.
Okay.
We had at least 2,000 students in the school. This was in the 60s, of course, early 60s. And it would seat all the students, so it must have easily seated 1,000. It had a balcony that went around 3 sides on the upper part. And they used to have community concerts there, things of this nature, or plays, musicals, and now that isn't there anymore. It's been made into classrooms.
Really?
Yes.
Now, how many minutes have you been talking?
Well, we've got 7.5 minutes left.
Okay. Tell people a joke. This is getting a little dry here.
Okay, a joke. Well, the sign in the coffee shop window said, "Don't make fun of your coffee. You'll be old and weak someday."
You got anything else?
Yes. I recently attended one of my class reunions, and it was supposed to be held 2 years ago as a 55th class reunion, but because of the pandemic, we were prevented from having it. So we called it a 50th class reunion, and I made a little speech and delivered greetings from Glendora to the class, Pittsfield High School class of 1965. And I let them know that you're still on television on 72
Yes,
stations
explain
to San Diego.
Explain to the audience why that was of interest to them, dear.
Oh, because that generation would have been watching SS Glendora, which came on in the summer of 1955, and later, if they hadn't watched that one, they certainly would have remembered Satellite 6 with Glendora in the spaceship.
Yeah.
And I could tell that there was a lot of recognition and appreciation from the little comments that I could hear being made while I was giving the speech, murmurings of recognition of the things I was saying.
Really? Yeah.
They loved your joke, too, about the can of peaches.
Okay, tell our audience the can of peaches joke.
Well, the little old lady was brought before the judge. And
Wait, a little old lady and?
The little old lady and her husband. And the little old lady was facing the judge when he said, "You were arrested for stealing a can of peaches." "Yes, Your Honor." The judge said, "How many peaches were in that can?" The little old lady said, 6. The judge said, "Well, I'm going to sentence you to 6 days in jail, 1 day for each peach." And the little old man standing there, obviously her husband, said, "May I speak, Your Honor?" The judge said, "Be brief." And the little old man said, "She also stole a can of peas."
Peas.
And you should have heard the peals of laughter. I had to pause in the speech to let them laugh.
Is that right? It's lovely to hear people laugh, isn't it, Wayne?
Yes, yes.
But so they really enjoyed it, did they?
Yes, they did. They did.
Oh, that's good. And your mother was working at General Electric, and how much money did she make?
Well, when my mother started working there, it was in the fall of 1935, and she made $12 a week. She had, after they took her deductions, because Social Security started that year, she had something like $11.88.
Well, wait a second. They only took 22 cents deductions?
Well, something like that. It wasn't too much at that time. Either Social Security either hadn't started quite yet, or it did shortly thereafter. But they would have been taking out money for taxes, I believe.
What about Federal Deposit Insurance Plan?
I don't know.
FDIC. They started taking out for that.
Well, I imagine as she went on that they took out more and more because she was making a little bit more as time went on. I know in the 1940s, when my father was working there, his pay was $20 a week.
What was the FDIC for, Wayne?
Well, the FDIC is for Federal Deposit Insurance for money in banks.
Tell people what it is, dear.
Well, it's insurance. It's to cover if a bank should fail.
Okay.
Your money is insured.
Let me make it more graphic to you, audience. My mom and dad went to the bank to get their savings. The bank was closed, and they never did get it.
Yes, that was during the Depression.
So does that explain to you why they had an FDIC?
That's why, because they didn't want that to happen again. They wanted to give people some security.
Will it happen again?
Well, hopefully not.
And what did your daddy do at General Electric?
He worked on the floor in the factory. I don't know exactly what he did, but they kept moving him around to different jobs.
And your mother was a secretary.
My mother was a stenographer.
Did you have a Stewart's shop in Pittsfield?
I don't remember that we ever had a Stewart's. I remember at one time there was a Mr. Peanut store up on North Street. And what else? Oh, we had beautiful stationery stores back there. Shandoff's was a nice stationery store, and they had one room that was just all greeting cards.
Oh, yeah.
And then we had Gaudy's office supplies, and they had nice things there, too. And then there was a little shop. This was in the Kennedy block near the corner North and West Streets. And it was like a newspaper store, and they had a little room that was all greeting cards. You could go in and buy gift items, too. That was a nice store.
Now, how many minutes do you have left?
2 minutes and 17 seconds.
All right, we're going to explain to you folks, after thanking Wayne for his very keen and graphic memories. How many years ago, Wayne, is that? 68?
Yeah, well, 1955, that would be 67 years. We'll be heading in for 68 years.
We're going to play you Glendora's guest invitation on the David Letterman show when David Letterman was still with NBC on the National Broadcasting Company, and his show emanated live from Rockefeller Plaza at 49th Street.
Yes, and we might also add, if the people would like to see it again, that it's available on YouTube.
And also it's not available on Pittsfield Community TV because there's no audio. And we tried to play it twice for the people, last week and this week before. So we're going to try it again this week. There was no audio on it.
Yes, I watched it, and I can verify that there was no audio.
And so on these programs are for the 19th and the 20. What is it? I told you the 19th, and then what up?
26th.
And the 26th of October. All right. So I guess it's time to bow out, dear Wayne.
It is. We're down to half a minute, which is going by very rapidly.
I hope you enjoyed your recollections as much as we did.
Oh, I did.
Okie doke.
We'll wish everybody a good day.
Let's see. A man said, there's nothing I wouldn't do for my brother, and there's nothing my brother wouldn't do for me, and so we go through life doing nothing for each other. Thank you very much, and thank you, Vicky Carezzi. Bye-bye, Wayne.
Bye, Glendora.
Bye-bye, everybody. Strength and peace. Thank you, Wayne.
You're welcome.
Now the next job is to figure out how to get that to Victoria if she doesn't come over here.
Yes, I believe you shut that off, but I actually didn't hear it shut off.
No, I'm shutting it off now, dear.